Hey guys, welcome to Alex Goes Coconuts. So on today's video, we're going to be making date squares. Date squares are one of those old-fashioned recipes that I've been enjoying since I'm a little girl. They remind me of my childhood, and I often bake them to put them into my kids' lunch boxes. It's a super easy dessert to make, and it's quite nutritious too. For those of you who don't know what a date square is, it's basically a mixture of deliciously sweet dates sandwiched between an oat crumble. Now I'm taking the traditional date square recipe and I'm adding a secret ingredient to make these the best date squares you've ever tasted. Now this recipe can be made gluten-free just by swapping out regular oats for gluten-free oats. It can also be made vegan just by swapping out the regular dairy butter for a vegan dairy alternative. Alright, so the first step is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Now when I'm choosing my dates, I prefer using Medjool dates, which are much bigger and plumper, and they're just gonna give a really gooey filling. Now I usually buy a big pack like this at Costco. They sell them in 2-pound packs, but obviously I won't need all this pack. I'm only gonna need about half of it, which is about 425 grams of dates. So let's begin. Now these don't come pitted, so to pit them, I just cut them in half and I pop out the seed really easily like this. And then I'll take the two halves here and I'll just chop it up into smaller pieces because you kind of want this to disintegrate as you're cooking it. So you want the pieces not to be too big. And then you can go ahead and put it straight into a small saucepan like this because we're going to be cooking down the fruit. Alright, so now that my dates are all cut up and ready to go, we're going to go ahead and add my secret ingredient. So instead of water, I'm going to add 1 cup of cold brewed coffee. Coffee will add a richness to the date squares and it'll give it almost like a caramelly aftertaste, which is really beautiful in a date square. So to this, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. I just find the lemon juice gives the right amount of acidity to counterbalance the sweetness of the dates. Now, if you don't want to use lemon, you can also use orange juice. So either lemon juice or orange juice, but I prefer lemon in this recipe. So I'm just going to squeeze half a lemon over the dates here, and it's going to really give it a beautiful acidity. We're also going to add 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. Now the brown sugar will give it a nice caramel flavor. So 2 tablespoons. And we're also going to add half a teaspoon of baking soda. So we'll just mix the whole thing and make sure everything is well distributed in the pot. And we're gonna go put this on high heat until it comes to a boil, and then we're gonna let it simmer for 5 minutes, stirring constantly until the dates have fallen apart. Now that our date filling is ready, we're just gonna set it aside and let it cool down. Meanwhile, in a medium-sized bowl, we're gonna measure out 1 3/4 cups of quick cooking oats. To this, we're going to add 1 cup of unbleached flour. We're also going to add 3/4 cups of brown sugar. Next is 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. And since I'll be using unsalted butter, I'll also add half a teaspoon of kosher salt. And with your hands, just mix everything to make sure that everything is well distributed. So now it's time to add 3/4 cups of softened butter. Now this is unsalted butter that I cut up into cubes. Now I'm going to use a pastry cutter to mix in the butter, but you can use your fingers or a fork if you don't have a cookie cutter like this. So you want to cut the butter into the oat mixture until you have a crumbly texture that resembles a crumble. So the next step is to line an 8-inch square pan with parchment paper and to butter the 2 remaining sides to make sure that the filling doesn't stick to the cake pan. Now we're just going to pour half the crumble mixture into the square pan. gonna save the other half to top the date squares with. Now, either with your hands or the bottom of a measuring cup, we're just gonna push down the crumble to form a crust at the bottom of the pan. So now that our crust is formed, it's time to add the date mixture to it. It's really easy. All you have to do is scoop it in and spread it out with a pastry spatula. Now we're just gonna top this date mixture with the rest of our crumble. And with our fingers, we're just gonna spread the crumble all the way to the edge, and we're gonna push down with our fingers just a tad, just to make sure that the crumble sticks on top of the filling and doesn't move when we cut into it. So this is gonna bake in the oven for 55 minutes until the top is crisp and nice and golden brown. So this just came out of the oven. The top is nice and golden brown and the whole house smells delicious. So we're gonna let this cool completely before cutting into it. So now that the date squares have cooled off, it's time to unmold it. Now the parchment paper makes this job really, really easy. As you can see, it just slides right out. So I'm just gonna set it down on a cutting board here so that I can cut them into even squares. Oh man, do you hear that crunch? It sounds so good. We're gonna go horizontally now. Same thing. So for presentation, I like to use a cake stand like this, and I just like to take the date squares and stack them here. Look at that. Isn't that a beautiful presentation? All right, so it's time to taste it. Let's give this a try. So good. This is the kind of dessert that just melts in your mouth. The sweetness of the dates with that little coffee aftertaste, it makes this dessert so rich and delicious. And the oat crumble topping is crispy and buttery, and it just makes one of those comforting desserts that you just want to eat all the time. If you want to make this dessert even more decadent, you can serve it warm with a scoop of vanilla ice cream. Alright guys, so I hope you liked this video. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever tried a date square. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click the little bell for notifications. Thanks for watching guys. See you next time. Bye.